Welcome to White Coat Green Room, where physicians of color can be their authentic self. I'm your host, Audrey C. Durant. Please don't ask me what the C stands for. I have been a pediatric surgeon for over 20 years now, and I am proud to be part of a cohort of women of color who, when conventional medicine said that there was not a place at the table for us, decided that we would make a table for ourselves. I'm going to name drop a little bit. Joelle Pierre matched with me in pediatric surgery, and we are proud to be one of the first 10 women of color to become pediatric surgeons. Uche Blackstock trained in the ER. She went on to become a professor of emergency medicine at NYU. She stepped down to start advancing health equity and is now the proud author of Legacy, a Black physician's reckoning with racism in medicine. My chief residents, Ayla Stanford, who was the first woman of color to be fully trained in the United States. She, during the pandemic, started the Black Physicians Consortium Against COVID, which made sure that her native Philadelphians were being properly diagnosed and treated for COVID. She then went on to become the Director of Regional Operations for Health and Human Services under President Biden. She has recently stepped down and gone back to being a all hands-on physician. One of my other chiefs was Kassan Blake, who is now the head of breast oncology at Cleveland Clinic in Florida. And of course, can't forget the incomparable Lisa Newman, the head of breast oncology at Weill Cornell, a new inductee into the National Academy of Medicine. And being at SUNY Downstate, there were physicians of color, male and female, chiefs above you, below you, everywhere you looked, and you felt that you were in a post-racial world, that everywhere was just like where you were seeing, that every place looked like the place that you were looking at. But that's not what we saw when we went out into the real world. When we went out into fellowship and we scattered, we all experienced sexism and racism, and we just accepted it. That was the price of admission. And like my mom says, when you're going through hell, you don't stop, you just keep going. And the assumption was, at least on my part, is that when I became attending, things were going to be different. I was going to make a change. But it really didn't change that much. Became an attending, you were at the bottom of the pile. And then you started to see racism from your patients. You saw it from nursing staff, from auxiliary staff. When you walked into the hospital, they asked you, were you the cleaning staff? Were you the secretary? When you would talk to families, they would talk to your medical student who was white. I saw it less because I was in the pediatric realm, and that's probably part of the reason that I chose it. But you were questioned again and again from, concerned parents. And in some ways I did understand it, but being asked again and again if I'd done a procedure before, if this was the first time I'd done it. And the worst was after you would explain the procedure, then being asked by the families, when are they going to talk to the real doctor? So again, I give families grace because they are concerned about their children. This is not a civil rights moment. This is not a time to kind of enforce my personal feelings on their moment. But after a while, it becomes weathering. It starts to wear on you. And it isn't just Black physicians, it's brown physicians. And it becomes something that takes away from the joy of medicine. The things that we go there to take care of families, to make them better. And yet, every time we are questioned as to the validity of our skills, the validity of whether or not we belong in that space, it makes you feel just a little bit smaller. And it was my last experience that was my moment of this is too much. I was questioned on things as minute as the jokes I was telling to children who wouldn't even remember me once they left the hospital. I was told that I looked concerningly hungry. I didn't even know what looking concerningly hungry meant. I was actually wondering if my mother had put in that complaint. But when they put me on suspension for doing a procedure that was the standard of care for pediatric surgery medicine at that time, then it was just too much. And then they started to pile on more to validate what was basically nonsense. And I got to think, well, maybe this is me. Maybe I'm the problem. So I did what everybody in the new world does. We went crowdsourcing, and I went to Facebook, and I went to the Young Black Physicians Facebook group. And you can question whether or not I belong there, since I've been in medicine for as many years as I have, but hey, I can fake it. And anonymously, I put out what was happening to me. And I thought I'd get 1 or 2 responses back. I got 300 responses back. And what I got was a sound of pain, all of our pain. We have been experiencing this pain alone. We have been owning it. We've been taking it in. We've been allowing it to make us smaller, to make us feel that we don't belong in spaces that we do belong in. And I realized that we weren't telling each other our stories, in part because hospitals made us sign NDAs, and we weren't telling our stories because we were ashamed. And, I just wasn't going to take it anymore. And that experience of going out into Facebook connected me with the National Medical Association. It also made me aware of 2 things: that this was an epidemic that has been recognized. The National Medical Association has started a committee that is recognizing that physicians are being targeted, and they are putting together machineries to help us. But we don't know that they exist because we're not telling each other our stories. And if you're not part of the National Medical Association, which you should be, then you are not aware that those resources are there. And more importantly, we are now using social media as a way to tell things and talk about things that should maybe be a little bit more private and contained. Most notably, there was a young surgeon, and she was telling us of her pain, of how she felt targeted by a surgical tech, and all of us on the Young Physicians group were like, whoa, you need to tell these to people who can make a difference, not here. You cannot be so open and having your face out there. You can get targeted by this hospital. And all of us as aunties, so to speak, wanted to kind of pull her in. But the reality is she didn't have any place to go. And places we don't have to go is we don't have mentors. We don't know, who do we go to? Where do we go? What are the steps that we can take to stay out of trouble? How do we get to the difficult residencies? How do we stay in those difficult residencies and fellowships? And how does it be that we are not the only face? How tired are we of being the only face in the room? So this is going to be our space. I want this to be where we tell our stories. This is where we come to tell each other what's happening, where to go, where not to go, where to step, where not to step, and where we make sure that the next generation is protected and elevated. So, welcome to White Coat Green Room. I look forward to hearing from you. Really, I do.